everyone, welcome to Chasing the Family Tree. Today I wanted to talk about the Jeffers, and the Jeffers are ancestors of my mom's side. And specifically I wanted to talk about Hardin Jeffers Jr. Hardin Jeffers Sr. was in the Civil War and he died at Andersonville prison camp. And the Hardin and his wife raised their family in Anderson County, Tennessee. So today we want to talk about Hardin Jr. And in researching Hardin Jr., I learned something that I did not know before, something I never heard of before, called the Coal Creek War. So our ancestor Hardin Jeffers was in the Coal Creek War. There's some pretty interesting things said about him. I've not been able to find him because there is no 1890 census. I'm not sure if he was actually in Anderson County during the Coal Creek War living, or if he was in Knoxville where his family was. He had moved to Knoxville after he became an adult after the Civil War, and he had raised his family there in Knoxville. So I have some video that's going to follow this of my trip to Coal Creek, which Coal Creek is currently Rocky Top, Tennessee. And I also went to Briceville, and Coal Creek and Briceville specifically is where the Coal Creek War took place. The video will be a tour of the Coal Creek Miners Museum, and this is a great place in Rocky Top where you can go and find out more about the mining community and the mining explosions that happened there, where many people lost their lives. And you can find out a little bit about the Coal Creek War as well. So when I was researching Hardin Jeffers Jr., I found an article in the Knoxville newspaper in the 1890s that described him having an interesting role in the war. And I had never heard of the war. And so I did a little research on that, and I just felt if you were going to watch the video, it'd be nice to give you a little background about specifically why this war was important. This was an armed labor uprising in Anderson County. So in 1891, the coal mine owners attempted to replace the coal miners with convict labor. The coal miners were trying to organize starting in the 1880s, and they wanted to unionize, and the mine owners of course did not want this. So they contracted with the state of Tennessee to actually hire convicts to come in and do the mining. And of course what they were paying the state for the convict labor was much less than the labor that the rates they were paying their regular miners. Governor Buchanan was the governor of Tennessee at this time, and he was a pro-labor governor. And the miners went to talk to the governor about this issue, and unfortunately the governor sided with the mine owners, and he wouldn't really be of much assistance to the miners in this labor issue. At one point, the miners actually forced the convicts onto a train and sent them back to Knoxville. And the convicts were returned to Rocky Top and Briceville with the Tennessee State Militia to try to ensure that they would be able to work there for the mine owners. And the mine workers, of course, didn't like this, and they set the stockade in Briceville on fire. And they freed all of the convicts and just let them go. Many of them, headed for the state border into Kentucky. There were also miners that came from Campbell County that were involved in this war as well. And the governor finally sent General Anderson in with the Tennessee State Militia, and he set up Fort Anderson. And Fort Anderson was on Militia Hill. And I actually have a photo of Militia Hill that I'm going to put at the end of this video. The trees are very grown up around that area now, but Militia Hill at one point you would have been able to see from the mountain down into the town. So it would have been a great place. There's a cannon that sits up there now, so they would have been firing from the top of the hill. I wanted to mention Governor Buchanan basically said that he was he was pro-labor, but he wanted to enforce the state's laws. Those were the laws that were on the book. And he was up for re-election in 1892. The Coal Creek War started in 1891. And because of this incident, he actually lost the nomination for his party for the next term for governor. There was a man by the name of D.B. Monroe, and D.B. Monroe was kind of the instigator for this war. He was not someone that was from the area of Anderson County. He wasn't a coal miner, but somehow he ended up in the mix in this story. And he was kind of the agitator with the miners, and he was the one that kind of was a little relentless about accepting what was going on with the mine owners. And he created a situation where he was trying to rally the miners and just keep this situation and this Coal Creek War going. And our ancestor, Hardin Jeffers Jr., actually worked with D.B. Monroe. Now, Hardin's brother John lived most of his life in Briceville, and he worked for the mining companies. He was a miner, and he was a labor executive, so he would have represented the miners when they would go to negotiate contracts with the mining companies. The church in Briceville, where they would have held prisoners, is actually the church that Hardin's brother John and his wife attended in their lifetime, and they are buried in the cemetery there. So that is something that will come in the video here. I made a stop there and videotaped that. I wanted to mention the church is absolutely beautiful. It has a dual steeple, but the church has been under a lot of disrepair. So they're actually working on restoring the church, so you'll get to see a lot of that work. The last visit I had from the visit before, there's not been a whole lot done to the church, but it is a community effort to fix this church. They're working on donations, they are working on volunteers, they are working with volunteer labor and skilled people, and of course the people that have the knowledge and the time to volunteer are all older, and they're having health problems, and they're having problems being able to volunteer. So if you want any information about the restoration of the church, I'm going to put the link to the Facebook page so you can actually follow the restoration if you'd like. But Briceville has a very tiny little library, which I actually stopped at the last time. And I talked to the women that worked in the library. They were super nice. And they happened to tell me that they are in charge of the renovation of the church and the restoration of the church. So if you're ever in that area and you want to talk to somebody about the church, you can stop at the library and talk to the ladies there. They were very helpful. So as far as Hardin Jr. goes, I want to read this to you. This is a snip from the Knoxville newspaper where they were talking about D.B. Monroe. By the way, D.B. Monroe was caught, he was charged, he was tried, and he was sentenced to 7 years, and he served 2. And there wasn't a lot of people that were charged with crimes in this war from the mining side, but he was definitely one. I have not been able to find anything about Hardin. I have some more research trips planned, and I'm hoping if I can find a little bit more about Hardin to find out if he actually was charged and if he served any time in prison for that, for being involved in that side of the Coal Creek War. So the newspaper in Knoxville states that Monroe sent out a notorious desperado by the name of Hardin Jeffers with a strong party to prevent the militia reinforcements from advancing. And there was something in the article, a story about the plan that Hardin was supposed to go around and capture the train when the train was coming through. And something happened that did not work out. D.B. Monroe was described in the newspaper as the arch instigator of much of the troubles with the miners. The state of Tennessee decided to let the convict labor law expire. They wouldn't vote it out of law. So they let the law expire, and that ended. It was several years later after the Coal Creek War, but that ended the convict lease system in Tennessee. And out of this situation, they ended up deciding to build Brushy Mountain Prison. And I have been to Brushy Mountain. It is an empty prison. There have been some very popular movies that have been filmed at Brushy Mountain, and it is open. You can go tour it. I actually have been there and toured the prison, not realizing, I didn't know anything about the Coal Creek War yet, to realize that there was some connection between the prison and the Coal Creek War in my family. So that prison is open. They actually have a restaurant there. There's a gift shop there, but the prison is very much left like it was when it was not useful anymore and was closed. And it's a very eerie and spooky place to be, but it's definitely very interesting place to tour. There's a museum there as well where they talk a lot about people that were there. This is the place where Martin Luther King's shooter was sent. But in the museum, they have a lot of neat things about the paraphernalia that would get smuggled into the prison, and they will actually have things there that they will show you in the museum, where they cut things out of books to hide guns or pins or something, knives, things like that. So if you get a chance to go to Brushy Mountain, I would recommend that because it's really interesting. So the video you're gonna watch is a tour of the Miners Museum, the Coal Creek Miners Museum. I will put the Facebook link in the comments so you can go visit that. I will also put the link to the Facebook page for the Briceville church. So if you want to follow the renovation of that or get in contact with the ladies of the library, you can message them through the Facebook page. And then the video continues with a trip to Briceville. So we actually go up to the church so you can see the church and the cemeteries, read some of the plaques. And then at the very end, I'm going to put a picture in there of Militia Hill. Militia Hill is kind of a remote area, and it's way up a mountain. So it was a very cool place to go and see. They've done a nice job of kind of keeping that mode so people can visit. So I hope you enjoy this video. Hardin Jeffers, I have a lot more to learn about him. The Jeffers have been the line in my tree right now that I have had for a brick wall for several years. And I've been to Knoxville, and I've been to Anderson County, and we'll soon be going to the archives in Nashville, to the state archives, to try to find out more about this family. But they're very fascinating. Hardin Sr. is the farthest back I have been able to go in this line, and he was born in the 18-teens. I'm assuming Tennessee, very early Tennessee. I'm thinking Eastern Tennessee. That seems to be what I'm finding out at this point, but I have not been able to pinpoint an exact location. But he moved to Anderson County, and he married there and raised his family. Like I said, he was involved in the Civil War. He was also in the Civil War with his two sons, Marion and John, who's the one that lived in Briceville. And Marion and John survived the war. Hardin Sr. did not. He was in his 40s when he went off to fight in the Civil War. The three of them were captured in Rogersville, Tennessee, and that is another trip I'm going to take you on because we can go and check out Rogersville. There's a lot of Civil War history there, so that'll be something that we'll be talking about in the future too. And who Hardin Sr.'s parents are. That has been the real mystery. So I hope you will enjoy these videos and stay tuned for another one, hopefully in a few short weeks. So we are in Briceville now, and this is the church in Briceville. And this church, like I said before, was used as a prison for the men that were captured by the Tennessee militia during the Cold Creek War. So I'm gonna walk a little bit closer to the church. The church has been under renovation for a while. If you're interested in following the renovations on Facebook, I can put a link at the end of this video, and I also do put a link for the Cold Creek Miners Museum, so you can go there and see what they have at their sites. But this church is beautiful, and I'm excited. I come through here every time I'm in this area, and I'm anxious to see when it's done. So I think it is owned by the community now, if I am not mistaken, as a community center, like for events and stuff. I don't think it's actually used as a church anymore. The cemetery, you can see a little bit on the side, and it goes pretty much up and around the back. And it does not look like it's been mowed recently. That's the problem I had last time. I didn't feel like venturing into the cemetery because I don't want to run across any snakes if the grass is a little bit high. But I'm gonna go ahead and walk across the street, and we'll take a video of all the plaques so you guys can see those. There were a couple of mining disasters and explosions that happened at a couple of the mines. There's several mines around here originally in this area, basically mountain towns where mining was the main way to make a living. So there was also the Briceville mine explosion, which the Cold Creek Miners Museum talks a lot about those disasters. Here's the sign about Briceville Church, so you can read a little bit of its history. And up the hill there is the church. We'll take a walk on up there, see if I can get through. Looks like there's a sign. If we can, we'll go up so you can see the front of the church up close. There's a sign up at the top of the hill here. It's kind of hard to see, but it says Cold Creek Mine Disaster Burial Site. So I know that there were people from some of the disasters that were actually buried here in the church cemetery. So here is the front of the church. They were working on the doors and the steps when I was here last year. But this is a pretty old building, so I'm guessing it's gonna need a lot of work. And over to the back here, you can see the cemetery. I can actually see John Jeffers' grave from here.